Personality. Every writer, every artist, musician has an intense focus on this. Most people write what they know. Every creative person looks at what they strive for at a different angle and they put their own spin on it. And with this spin, it gets someone to think outside of the box. What has been done, but what has been done in a different way. With this, the person adds something special to the mix. Their own ideas, their own thought process, and, a lot of the time, their own personality. All of these add up to a unique take on a project, and you can see what their mind entails and where they came from. By looking at what the person made, it's like a window into their mindset. In music, the lyrics can hit closer to the truth because the person, or people, can write what they know and give a vivid image to the listener. But sometimes, there can be too many angles to oneself. There can be good elements and bad elements, but when both dominate one project, it could be a very interesting product. I have talked about Eminem's Encore and the mindset that he was in, and how that was an interesting failure, but I thought about that video and the representation of a dying genre video essay, where my mind started to go towards the king of pop himself, and this begins in 1987. Michael Jackson released Bad, the follow-up to the massively successful Thriller, and, despite it being a good album, the high expectations were riding against it. And there was the fact that, in hindsight, it seemed a bit confused. Long story short, the music was a lot different than Thriller, with a lot more pop focused rather than the genre roulette album that came before it. And also, there was his image. Not talking about his skin bleaching, I'm talking about what he's wearing, on both the album cover and in the music video. It seems out of nowhere. He pretty much went from looking like a man who you could take to meet your family, to looking like a tough guy in leather. So after the pretty good sales of Bad / disappointing sales next to Thriller, with Bad going platinum, Michael went back to the studio and recorded an album that showed a lot more of his personality, Dangerous. This album, like Bad, is a different sounding album, with its leanings towards the New Jack Swing at an all-time high, and is considered the swan song of the NJS era. Dangerous is an interesting crossroad in terms of his albums, because it showcases his talents in the same way that Alice in Chains focused their talents on their self-titled album. In fact, you can compare both these albums and see that they both have something in common. Both albums came out in the 90s and are representations of a genre that is about to bow out. Both of them have personality that showcases their musical abilities as well as lyrical content. And also, they both showcase what is good about them and what is bad about them, and both showcase problems that they would have in their future output. There is no surprise that Michael Jackson's albums sound different from each other. Off the Wall was more focused on disco and funk. Thriller had pop, rock, and funk elements. Bad had a lot more emphasis on pop, while Dangerous mixed his music with everything. That is because Michael worked with a different producer. He wanted to have more creative control in his music, and also, he didn't want to think that Quincy Jones, the producer of his solo career so far, to be the reason as to why he was so successful. So that is why Michael Jackson changed producers and went into an entirely different direction in Dangerous. The main producer is Teddy Riley, who is credited as one of the creators of the New Jack Swing genre that was popular in the late 80s and early 90s. And this album exemplifies one of the personalities of the king of pop, experimentation. Now, Michael Jackson has explored different genres over his musical career. He bridged the gap in terms of music, and he was a gateway for people to explore out of their comfort zone. And with his collaborations with people like Eddie Van Halen and Paul McCartney, they were able to get new fans through Michael. So with Dangerous, he opted to try out the New Jack Swing genre on top of R&B, gospel, soul, rock, pop, and hip-hop. With people like Heavy D, Rex and Effects, and Slash appearing on this album, it shows that MJ wanted to get people that would enhance the quality of this album. But at the same time, he revisits aspects from his past albums and would explore and expand on his future output. The album has both his harder and softer styles clashing. Songs like Jam, Why You Wanna Trip On Me, She Drives Me Wild, and the title track show off his grittier urban style, and uses his rapping skill set on top of his singing skills. and he keeps the momentum going with songs that go smooth, like In the Closet, Remember the Time, Can't Let Her Get Away, and Who Is It. These specific songs are a bit softer than the previous mentioned songs, but the edge is still there and they are much catchier in an urban way. Black and White and Give It To Me explore Michael's venture into rock, with the former taking a harder rock edge, while the latter is a little bit more sinister with some western vibes. And then there's the side of Michael that shows the softer side. Heal the World is pretty much his solo version of We Are the World, and a precursor to Earth Song. Will You Be There is about loving a human in all situations. Keep the Faith is about keeping your head up no matter what. And Gone Too Soon is a reworked version of a song that was performed by Dionne Warwick. It was dedicated to Ryan Waite, a teenager who was expelled from school for having been diagnosed with AIDS. Jackson befriended him for a few years before White's death in 1990. These songs are slower, powerful, and sad songs that are sprinkled throughout this urban pinnacle of Jack Swing, and with all these qualities going on in the 77-minute album, it is a peak of Michael Jackson's blockbuster albums. This album exemplifies everything that Michael does right and wrong in this album. He was chasing the trend of New Jack Swing when it was at its peak and went back into that well with History. He mixed up the harder hitting songs with the softer ballads on this album, although the softer ballads overtook his harder hitting songs in the future, to the point to where his softer songs went from emotional to way too sad and glurgy, to the point as where you probably cannot take them seriously. He has also looked into other genres on this album, however, it was because people had to help him with this, as opposed to producing things on his own without knowing what made the things on Dangerous works. And where the appearances of other people work well here, and they make sense in the context of this album, other albums not so much. Dangerous goes to show that there was an understanding to why the album works, how it balances the personality traits of the King of Pop, and why it is the best focused clash of genres in his discography.